Hi, I'm Connie Wang, executive editor of Refinery29, and I write about how what we wear connects to our culture. In February of this year, I found myself struggling to write an article about this rash of violence against Asian Americans who chose to wear face masks in public. The CDC had said face masks did little to prevent the spread of this disease that was ravaging China, but wasn't yet in America. In fact, civilians who wore them would be committing a deeply selfish act. Every person you saw on the subway in a mask meant there was one less for medical professionals in hospitals. I had a hard time figuring out how I could get this point across. To those who grew up around SARS, they believed masks worked in stopping the spread of disease. It wasn't controversial, self-centered, or anti-science. Masks as a daily accessory was just a fact of life. How could I explain that to Americans who rarely saw them in public? Fast forward 6 months, one pandemic, and over 170,000 American deaths. Everything has changed. It wasn't until early April when the CDC finally acknowledged that non-medical masks were effective in slowing the spread of COVID-19 that folks were able to wear them with science on their side. But by then, more than 10,000 Americans had already died. Today, we know the difference between N95s and non-medical cloth masks. We have etiquette around exercising, grocery shopping, and taking public transportation in masks. We also know that not everyone is willing to wear them. To some, masks have become so politicized to the detriment of our public health. 6 months ago, most Americans couldn't tell you where to buy a facial mask. These days, most Americans likely own at least one. This sudden demand, and therefore sudden need to supply them, predictably, has thrown the fashion industry for a loop. The pandemic has already upended production capabilities and supply chains, as well as ransacked consumers' pocketbooks, and thus their abilities and appetite to purchase new clothing and accessories. But masks have become a necessity. So, what now? Some designers like Christian Siriano, Rachel Comey, and Dov Charney quickly turned their factories into creating non-medical PPE, or personal protective equipment. But creating masks to some was not only a charitable act, but also a potential financial life raft to offset the loss in revenue of apparel, occasion wear, and typically reliable fashion categories. Etsy reported the company earned $346 million in 3 months alone from selling masks, a category that just didn't exist 3 months prior. But the late adoption of masks presented a moral predicament for those interested in making them. Start producing fun masks and risk being labeled as cashing in on a health crisis. Ignore it and risk being seen as negligent. The result was, predictably, chaos. In fact, Dov Charney's LA apparel factories, which reopened to churn out masks to a swarm of positive press, later became a hotbed for infection. Over 300 workers contracted coronavirus, and 4 died before the county's Department of Public Health ordered the factories to close. For all these reasons, you can't find face masks on luxury retail sites. I don't know any other product that's been as politicized to the extent that retailers feel the need to bury them away and hide them. When you search for face masks on luxury fashion retailers, you're more likely to come across $95 SK2 facial treatment sheet masks than PPE. High-end designer versions of masks do exist, but they've been created by younger, more progressive labels like Marine Serre, Kalina Strada, and Off-White. And they're going to cost you well into the hundreds. In case you were curious, here are some of the most expensive masks I could find on the internet. And this one from Off-White, the highest bid is for $222, but they're asking for $410 for one. But at least for now, people are still buying masks. And that might not change for a while. That begs the question, when it comes to masks and fashion, are they just a trend? Will they disappear with the implementation of a vaccine, or has this pandemic effectively created a whole new category for designers? If we look to East Asian countries who dealt with SARS for any guidance, mask wearing has remained a habit for most people. But there, masks are, for the most part, a purely utilitarian tool. Blue and white medical masks are as common an accessory as sunglasses or headphones. But there, you're unlikely to see fashion masks. But will that spirit extend back to the US, where our tendency to value individualism over collectivism has pushed back on the mass adoption of masks and, allowed the continued spread of COVID? Some fashion designers are wary of investing too much in masks, lest the public's need and desire for non-medical masks disappear after a vaccine. It's possible that Americans' instincts towards self-expression and originality will lead to a real opportunity for fashion masks to flourish. It says something about American culture that we immediately pivot from wearing something that is functional and does the job to wearing something that expresses my personality, or that makes me look or feel good. That pivot from essential item to fashion item is something that's quite peculiar to the American market. It speaks to the American sense of individuality, but also entrepreneurialism. Thanks for watching Refinery29. For more videos like this, click here. To subscribe, click here.